My name is Naomi. I am 28 years old, and no matter how hard I try to lock the past behind the heavy iron doors of my mind, the memory of the night my husband and mother-in-law systematically stripped me of my life's work still burns like raw acid. It was a crisp, quiet Thursday evening in the historic Fashion District. There was no theatrical storm, no howling wind, just the quiet, cold hum of the city's streetlights reflecting off the polished windows of the Velvet Needle, the boutique bridal brand I had spent 6 years building from a single sewing machine in a cramped apartment. Inside the warmly lit studio, the air still smelled of premium silk, steamed tulle, and the lavender oil I used to calm anxious brides. I was hunched over the main cutting table, my fingers calloused and marked with graphite, putting the final hand-stitched details on a custom silk organza gown. I was exhausted, having worked a 30-hour shift to prepare for our upcoming summer collection preview. The heavy glass door of the studio clicked open. I looked up, expecting to see my husband, Victor, returning with the dinner he had promised to bring. Instead, Victor walked in, flanked by his mother, Tabitha. Both of them were dressed in immaculate, expensive designer suits, their faces cold, detached, and carrying a quiet, unified hostility that immediately made the warm room feel freezing. Victor did not ask if I was tired. He did not look at the intricate gown I had spent weeks drafting. Instead, he tossed a thick, white folder onto my cutting table, directly over the delicate silk fabric. "Sign it, Naomi," Victor said, his voice entirely flat, stripped of the warmth he used to use when we first opened the shop. "It's a corporate restructuring agreement. We are officially removing your name from the operational registry of the Velvet Needle." I stared at the document, my breath catching in my throat. My stiff, paint-stained fingers trembled as I pulled the papers toward me. Restructuring? Victor, we built this brand together. I design every pattern, I cut every piece of fabric, and I personally fit every single bride who walks through that door. What are you talking about? Tabitha stepped forward, her expensive heels clicking sharply against the hardwood floor. She adjusted her diamond-encrusted watch, looking at my charcoal-stained linen apron with a sneer of pure aristocratic disgust. "Let's be entirely honest for once, Naomi," Tabitha said, her voice dripping with a practiced high-society condescension. "You are a magnificent seamstress, dear, but you are a kitchen-class worker. Look at yourself. You walk around this luxury boutique in paint-stained rags, smelling of industrial steam and thread wax. Our clients are daughters of senators, tech founders, and old money families. They want to buy a dream, not look at the sweaty laborer who made it." "This boutique is a luxury brand now," Victor chimed in, leaning against my desk with a smug, arrogant grin. "We need a face that represents high fashion elegance and modern influence. We've already signed an exclusive partnership with Bianca Cole, the city's top fashion influencer. She is going to be the new creative director and the public face of the Velvet Needle. Having you lurking in the back room looking like a tired maid ruins the aesthetic we are trying to sell." I looked at my husband, the man who had promised to stand by me when we couldn't even afford to buy thread. "You are replacing me with Bianca. She doesn't even know how to thread a bobbin, Victor. She's a model who takes photos in other people's clothes. Without my patterns, this boutique has no product." "We have your patterns, Naomi," Tabitha sneered, tapping the folder on the desk. "If you read page 12 of your original partnership agreement, the one you signed when we incorporated 3 years ago, find that any designs, patterns, and technical drawings created on these premises belong entirely to the corporation. You don't own them. The brand does. And since Victor and I hold 60% of the voting shares, we are exercising our right to buy out your remaining 40% for a nominal fee of $10,000. $10,000, I whispered, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "The summer collection I am currently sewing is projected to bring in over 500,000 in pre-orders alone." "Which is exactly why we need you out before the launch," Victor said coldly. He reached down, grabbed my personal leather sketchbook, the one containing my private, unreleased designs for the next 3 seasons, and tossed it into his briefcase. "Your services are no longer required. Hand over your keys and your security badge, now." "And if I refuse?" I asked, my voice shaking with a dangerous mixture of grief and rising fury. Tabitha smiled, a sickening, triumphant look in her eyes. "If you refuse, we will file a formal injunction, freeze your personal bank accounts for violating corporate fiduciary duties, and drag your name through the mud so thoroughly that no designer in this country will ever hire you to sweep their floors. Don't play the victim, Naomi. You were a low-class dressmaker when my son found you, and we are simply returning you to your natural habitat. Before I could even find the words to fight back, Victor reached out, grabbed my arm with a firm, bruising grip, and pulled me away from the cutting table. He escorted me to the back exit, pushed me out into the cold, quiet alleyway behind the boutique, and slammed the heavy metal security door shut. I heard the electronic lock beep as my access codes were instantly deleted from the system. They stood inside the warm, glittering studio, surrounded by my hand-stitched gowns, truly believing they had executed the perfect corporate heist. They thought they had discarded a helpless, quiet seamstress who had nothing but a needle and thread to her name. What their greedy, small-minded minds did not know was that the soul of a brand does not live in a building, a logo, or a social media influencer's feed. It lives in the hands of the creator. And in exactly 10 days, the entire luxury empire they thought they had stolen would crumble into a pile of worthless rags. Before I reveal how I dismantled their entire world, let me know where you are watching this story from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to a toxic, arrogant family who tried to take credit for your hard work. Standing in the dim alleyway, the chill of the evening air finally seeped through my thin blouse. I looked down at my hands, still dusty with French chalk. I didn't cry. The grief was there, heavy and suffocating, but beneath it a cold, sharp focus began to take root. I reached into my pocket and pulled out my personal phone. I opened my banking app, hoping to at least transfer my personal savings. The screen loaded, displaying a red alert. Account locked due to administrative dispute filed by corporate primary holder. Victor had already called the bank, claiming my personal savings were corporate funds pending audit. I had exactly $45 in cash in my pocket. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a text message from Reid, the quiet, middle-aged head of our technical sewing room. He had been with me since the beginning, a master pattern maker who valued the craft as much as I did. Naomi, the message read. I saw them lock the back door. I'm meeting you at the diner on Fort Street. I have something you need to see. 10 minutes later, I walked into the warm, neon-lit diner. Reid was sitting in a corner booth, a cup of black coffee in front of him and a small, secure USB drive resting on the table. He looked up, his eyes filled with a mixture of anger and deep respect as I slid into the booth opposite him. They think they own your designs, Naomi, Reid said without preface, sliding the USB drive toward me. But they don't know how a real designer operates. Before Victor wiped your server access, I managed to download the raw caddy files, the original vector drafts, and the time-stamped digital signatures of every pattern you've created over the last 6 years. Reid, Victor's lawyers will sue us if we use those patterns. I whispered, my voice tight. The partnership agreement says the brand owns the patterns created on the premises. Reid leaned forward, a quiet, knowing smile on his face. The brand owns the patterns created on the premises during working hours, Naomi. But do you remember the 6 flagship designs of the new summer collection? The ones Bianca is currently planning to launch next week. I nodded. I designed them at home on my personal laptop during my maternity leave last year before we even signed the new corporate lease. Exactly, Reid whispered. And I have the digital timestamps proving those designs were finalized on your personal home server months before the corporate entity even existed. On paper, those 6 flagship gowns belong to you, and you alone. If they try to launch that collection next week, they aren't just launching a brand, they are committing massive, multi-million-dollar copyright infringement. I stared at the small USB drive, my heart hammering a fierce, electric rhythm. The cold anger inside me crystallized into a definitive, lethal plan. They wanted a model to be the face of their brand, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper of absolute certainty. Let's see how well Bianca Cole performs when she realizes the entire collection she is wearing is a stolen lie. Reid flagged down the waitress and ordered a second cup of black coffee, his eyes never leaving the USB drive resting between us on the laminate table. The diner's neon sign buzzed outside, casting a faint pink glow over the scratched surface of my laptop as I booted up. I need you to look at the shipping logs I pulled before they revoked my database credentials, Naomi, Reid whispered, tapping a folded piece of paper he pulled from his breast pocket. Victor has been playing a very dangerous game with the boutique's capital over the last 4 months. He told you we were low on cash because of rising fabric import tariffs, right? Yes, I said, my fingers flying across the keyboard as I imported the kitty files from Raid's drive. He claimed the Italian silk house raised their prices by 40%, which is why he refused to let me hire an assistant seamstress. I've been working 30-hour shifts alone because he said we were on the verge of a cash flow crisis. Raid let out a harsh, dry laugh. The Italian silk house didn't raise their prices by a single cent. I checked the direct customs manifests. Victor has been writing 40% of our operating capital into a newly registered shell company called VB Creations. I stopped typing, my eyes locking onto Reed. VB, Victor, and Bianca. Exactly, Reed said, unfolding the paper to reveal a series of wire transfer receipts. He's been taking the pre-order deposits from our most loyal, high-end bridal clients' deposits meant to secure their silk and lace and transferring them directly to Bianca's personal account under the guise of marketing consultation fees. He isn't just trying to replace you, Naomi. He's actively draining the boutique's cash reserves to fund Bianca's lavish lifestyle and secure her signature on a new, independent luxury label they plan to launch the moment they push you out. A cold, heavy knot formed in my chest as the sheer scale of Victor's betrayal became clear. It wasn't just a sudden corporate disagreement. It was a slow, calculated embezzlement of our shared life's work. The technical glitch that locked my bank accounts wasn't a temporary administrative hold, it was a deliberate move to keep me from realizing that our business accounts had been completely hollowed out. They have a private fitting scheduled at the boutique tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Reed continued, his voice dropping to a tense, quiet murmur. It's not in the official digital calendar. I only found out because Bianca's personal assistant called the sewing room to demand we prep the showroom for a VIP guest. It's Charlotte Vance, the daughter of the city's largest real estate tycoon. She's looking for a custom, one-of-a-kind gown for her high society wedding next month. I leaned back, my mind racing. Charlotte Vance was the holy grail of the bridal world. If she chose a designer, her endorsement alone could cement a boutique's reputation for the next decade. Victor promised her that Bianca would personally present an exclusive, unreleased design from our upcoming summer collection. Reed said, a look of profound disgust crossing his features. And do you know which design he promised her, Naomi? My eyes drifted to the screen of my laptop, where the digital rendering of my masterpiece, the Aurelia gown, glowed in intricate, three-dimensional lines. It was a dress I had spent 9 months developing in my spare time at home, utilizing a revolutionary, seamless draping technique I had spent years perfecting. It was a design Victor had sneered at when he saw me sketching it in our living room, calling it too complicated for a simple dressmaker to pull off. He took your physical sample of the Aurelia gown from the cutting table right after he locked you out, Reed whispered. They are going to present it to Charlotte tomorrow as Bianca's original masterpiece to secure a $50,000 deposit. The burning sensation of betrayal in my chest suddenly froze into an absolute, razor-sharp clarity. Victor and Tabitha believed they had left me with nothing. They believed that because they held the keys to the physical boutique. They held the keys to my talent. They want to present my work as theirs, I said softly, a slow, cold smile spreading across my face. Then we are going to let them. But they aren't going to get a single dollar from Charlotte Vance. What are you going to do, Naomi? Reed asked, his eyes shining with a sudden, eager curiosity. I'm going to let them hold their private fitting tomorrow, I said, closing my laptop with a quiet, decisive snap. I'm going to let Bianca drape my gown over Charlotte, and I'm going to let Vert pitch his fraudulent brand. But while they are playing dress-up in my showroom, I am going to file a formal, digital DMCA copyright strike and an emergency intellectual property injunction directly with the state licensing board. I tapped the USB drive resting on the table. With the digital timestamps you saved, Raid, the law is entirely on my side. By the time Victor tries to process Charlotte's deposit tomorrow afternoon, his merchant terminal will be frozen, and his precious boutique will be hit with a federal cease and desist order for copyright infringement. I looked out the window of the diner, where the first faint light of dawn was beginning to paint the city skyline in shades of cold blue. Victor thinks he threw me out into the dark, I whispered, my voice carrying a quiet, lethal weight, but he forgot that the dark is where the real work gets done. The morning sun of Friday rose cold and sharp, casting long, geometric shadows across the cobblestone streets of the Fashion District. By 8:15 a.m., I was sitting in a small, rented corner of a shared creative workspace just 3 blocks away from the Velvet Needle. Beside me, Reed was nursing another cup of coffee, his eyes bloodshot but intense. On the table, my laptop screen displayed the official filing portal of the state's Intellectual Property Office and the Merchant Services Administrative backend. With Reed's precise digital logs and the time-stamped Katie files, my intellectual property lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense specialist named Clara, who had helped my grandfather protect his nursery patents years ago, had worked through the night. She had drafted a comprehensive emergency cease and desist order, backed by a sworn affidavit of ownership and a digital forensic report. The digital filing is officially submitted, Naomi. Clara's voice came through my phone speaker, calm and reassuring. We have registered a formal copyright claim for the Aurelia gown and the 5 supporting designs of the summer collection. Because you have undisputed proof of creation prior to the formation of the corporate entity, the state licensing board has issued an automated administrative lock on those specific designs. If they attempt to sell, manufacture, or publicly showcase those pieces, they will be in direct violation of a state injunction. What about their payment systems? I asked, my voice tight. I have forwarded the filed injunction directly to their merchant bank's underwriting and fraud department, Clara explained. Since the boutique's corporate bank accounts are currently flagged with an active administrative dispute over your locked personal funds, the merchant bank is legally obligated to freeze any incoming high-value transactions associated with disputed intellectual property. If they try to swipe a card for a deposit on those dresses, the system will reject it instantly. I looked at Reed, a quiet, freezing rush of adrenaline surging through my veins. It's 8:45 a.m. Charlotte Vance's fitting starts in 15 minutes. Reed, are you ready? Reed stood up, straightening his linen work vest. I've worked in that sewing room for 5 years, Naomi. I know every back entrance, every security camera blind spot, and exactly how to walk into that showroom without triggering the front chime. Let's go. We walked the 3 blocks in silence, the cool morning air clearing the exhaustion from my mind. As we approached the elegant facade of the Velvet Needle, I could see the sleek, black town car of Charlotte Vance idling near the curb. Through the tall, arched glass windows of the showroom, the boutique looked like an ethereal dream. The soft lavender lighting was on, and the physical sample of my Aurelia gown was displayed on a custom velvet mannequin at the center of the floor, its delicate silk organza layers catching the morning light like spun glass. Victor was standing near the entrance, practically vibrating with greasy, sycophantic energy as he held open the door for a tall, elegant young woman. It was Charlotte Vance. She was accompanied by her mother and a personal stylist. Trailing closely behind them was Bianca Cole, dressed in an oversized, ridiculously expensive white blazer, her face painted in a mask of effortless, high society charm. Reed guided me through the quiet alleyway behind the building. He used his physical master key, the one Victor had forgotten to deactivate in his haste to lock my digital codes, to quietly open the heavy steel door of the pattern-making room. The scent of steam, fabric dye, and lavender oil hit me instantly, bringing a temporary ache to my heart. This was my sanctuary, the place where I had bled and sweat to build a future. We slipped past the cutting tables and stood behind the heavy velvet drapes that separated the technical sewing room from the main showroom. Through a small gap in the fabric, we could hear everything. It is an absolute honor to welcome you to the Velvet Needle, Charlotte. Victor's voice dripped with a smooth, theatrical warmth. We know you have your choice of any designer in Paris or Milan, but we promise you that what you are about to see today is unlike anything in the world. This is the crown jewel of our upcoming summer collection. Bianca stepped forward, gesturing dramatically toward the mannequin holding my Aurelia gown. When I was designing this piece, Charlotte, I wanted to capture the absolute essence of modern royalty. I spent months sourcing this specific silk organza and developing this seamless draping technique. It's designed to mold perfectly to your silhouette, moving like water as you walk down the aisle. I clenched my fists in the shadows of the drapes. The sheer, unadulterated audacity of her lie made my blood run cold. Bianca had never touched a pair of fabric shears in her life, yet she stood there, casually taking credit for the 9 months of structural engineering I had poured into that dress. Charlotte Vance walked slowly around the mannequin, her eyes wide with genuine awe. She reached out, her gloved fingers gently touching the intricate hand-stitched hem. It's absolutely breathtaking, Bianca. The structure of the bodice is genius. I've never seen draping like this. It's entirely seamless. That's because it's a proprietary technique we developed exclusively for this brand. Victor chimed in eagerly, sensing the kill. We are only creating one custom version of this gown for the entire season. If you secure it today, Charlotte, it will be uniquely yours. We just need a $50,000 deposit to lock in the fabric order from Italy and begin the custom fittings. Charlotte's mother nodded in approval. It's perfect, Charlotte. It's exactly what we've been looking for. Charlotte smiled, pulling a sleek, matte black American Express card from her designer handbag and handing it directly to Victor. Let's do it. Run the deposit, Victor. I want this gown. Victor's face lit up with a look of triumphant, greedy ecstasy. He grabbed the card, his hands practically shaking as he walked over to the sleek, brass-plated register terminal on the marble counter. Tabitha stood nearby, her arms crossed, a smug, aristocratic smirk of victory playing on her lips. They believed they had done it. They had discarded the kitchen-class laborer and were about to secure the most prestigious client in the city using her stolen masterpiece. I didn't wait any longer. I reached out, pushed the heavy velvet drapes aside, and stepped out onto the polished hardwood floor of the showroom. The sharp click of my heels echoed through the quiet space. Victor froze, his finger hovering just millimeters above the charge button on the terminal. He turned slowly, his face shifting from greedy excitement to absolute, paralyzed shock as he saw me standing there, dressed in my simple work clothes, my eyes locked onto his with a freezing, lethal calm. I wouldn't press that button if I were you, Victor, I said, my voice remarkably quiet, yet carrying a resonance that instantly commanded the entire room. Tabitha's face contorted into an expression of pure, venomous rage as she stepped forward, her voice rising to a harsh, defensive pitch. Naomi, how dare you show your face in this boutique? You were officially terminated last night. Security! Victor, call the police and have this trespassing peasant dragged out of here immediately. Charlotte Vance and her mother turned, their eyes darting between me, Tabitha, and Victor in deep, aristocratic confusion. I ignored Tabitha entirely. I walked slowly toward the marble counter, pulling a sealed, official legal document from my portfolio and sliding it directly over the glass surface, resting it right on top of Victor's brass register. You can call the police if you'd like, Tabitha, I said, my voice entirely flat, but I think they'll be much more interested in the federal copyright infringement and merchant fraud charges currently pending against your son. The marble-topped counter of the showroom became a silent battleground. Victor stared at the heavy, red-sealed legal document resting on top of his card terminal as if it were a live explosive. His fingers, still holding Charlotte Vance's black card, began to tremble. What is the meaning of this? Charlotte's mother asked, her voice instantly dropping into a tone of sharp, upper-class skepticism as she stepped between her daughter and the counter. Victor, who is this woman? And why is she talking about federal copyright infringement? She is nobody, Mrs. Vance, Tabitha hissed, her aristocratic composure fracturing as she lunged forward to grab the document. She is a disgruntled, mentally unstable former seamstress who was let go last night for incompetence. This is a pathetic, desperate attempt to shake us down. Touch that document, Tabitha, and you violate a direct state court order, my lawyer, Clara, said as she stepped out from behind the velvet drapes, flanked by Reed. She held a secondary, certified copy of the filing. My name is Clara Vance, representing Naomi Vance, the sole creator, designer, and registered trademark holder of the Aurelia gown and the entire summer bridal collection. Bianca's face went completely pale beneath her heavy camera makeup. She took a step back, her eyes darting toward the mannequin holding the dress. That's a lie. I designed that dress. I have the mood boards on my Instagram to prove it. Mood boards are not legal patents, Miss Cole, Clara said coldly, sliding a tablet across the marble counter. These are the digital CAD files and time-stamped vector drawings for the Aurelia gown, registered under Naomi's private, pre-merger digital signature exactly 9 months ago. They are time-stamped during her maternity leave, long before your partnership with the Velvet Needle was even drafted. On paper, you didn't design a single thread of this collection. You are attempting to sell stolen intellectual property. Charlotte Vance looked at the tablet, her sharp eyes scanning the engineering drafts of the very dress she was wearing. The signature Naomi Vance was embedded into every single digital layer of the design. A look of profound, chilling disgust washed over her face. She looked at Bianca, then at Victor. You told me this was a Bianca Cole original, Charlotte said, her voice dripping with an icy, dangerous quietness. You promised me an exclusive design. It is as exclusive, Charlotte. I swear to you. Victor panicked, his voice rising to a frantic, sweating pitch. He shoved Charlotte's card into the terminal, his fingers violently slapping the buttons. The legalities are just a minor administrative misunderstanding between partners. We will settle it in court. I am running the $50,000 deposit right now to secure your order. He hit the enter key. The sleek brass screen of the register spun its digital processing wheel. For 3 agonizing seconds, the beep, beep, beep. A harsh, red alert flashed across the screen. Transaction declined. Contact merchant service. Error code LOK90. Victor's heart visibly stopped. What? No, no, no! It's an American Express Centurion card. It can't decline. Run it again. He swiped the card frantically, his hand shaking so hard he nearly dropped it. Beep, beep, beep. Transaction declined. Merchant I terminated. Your merchant account has been frozen, Victor, I said, my voice completely calm, contrasting beautifully with his mounting hysteria. I filed the formal injunction with your underwriting bank's fraud department at 8:00 a.m. Since you attempted to use my copyrighted designs as collateral for your new corporate lines, they have flagged your entire terminal for active merchant fraud. You can't process a single dollar. You ruined my launch? Bianca shrieked, her high society influencer persona completely slipping as she glared at Victor. You told me she was a nobody. You told me she had no legal leg to stand on. My brand is attached to this collection. If this gets out, my sponsors will drop me by lunchtime. Your brand is a lie, Bianca, I said, looking her directly in the eye, and by lunchtime the entire fashion press will have the digital timestamps proving it. Charlotte Vance stepped out of the draped fitting area, her mother already pulling her designer coat over her shoulders. She looked at Victor and Tabitha with a look of absolute, lethal social condemnation. My father's real estate firm manages 70% of the commercial leases in this fashion district, Victor, Charlotte said, her voice ringing out like a death knell. And I will make sure every single boutique owner, designer, and high-end client on this street knows that the Velvet Needle is nothing but a fraudulent, thieving house of cards. Do not ever contact my family again. Without waiting for a response, Charlotte, her mother, and her stylist swept out of the boutique, slamming the heavy glass door behind them. The silence that settled over the showroom was heavy and suffocating. Victor slowly let go of the terminal, his hands falling limply to his sides as he stared at the red, declined screen. Tabitha slumped against the marble counter, her face looking suddenly old, withered, and stripped of all its aristocratic armor. You think you've won, Naomi? Victor whispered, his eyes bloodshot as he looked up at me, his voice trembling with a mixture of fear and pure venom. You blocked one deposit, but we still own this building, we still own the brand name. We will sue you until you don't even have a single needle left to your name. You don't own the brand, Victor, I said, stepping closer and placing my hands flat on the counter. And you don't even own this building anymore. While you were busy buying diamonds for Bianca with my client's deposits, you defaulted on your secondary business loan. Arthur and I tracked your shell company's debt yesterday. I bought your outstanding loan portfolio from the bank this morning. I leaned in, my voice dropping to a whisper of absolute, freezing triumph. I am your landlord now, Victor, and your eviction notice is already being printed. The air inside the elegant showroom of the Velvet Needle felt as cold as a tomb. The heavy glass doors had barely stopped vibrating from Charlotte Vance's dramatic exit, yet the emotional debris left behind was already suffocating. Victor stood frozen, staring at his hands as if the plastic of the decline card terminal had physically burned his skin. Tabitha was the first to break the silence, her voice cracking with a high-pitched, desperate rage as she pointed a manicured finger at me. You are lying, she screamed, her aristocratic facade completely shattered. You cannot buy our debt. This building has been in our family's commercial portfolio for a decade. The bank would never sell our loans to a low-class, disgraced seamstress. Clara, my attorney, stepped forward with absolute professional poise. She did not raise her voice. but every word she spoke carried the weight of an iron hammer. She pulled a blue-bound legal document from her briefcase and laid it flat on the marble counter next to the locked register. "It is already done, Mrs. Ridgway," Clara said. "Your son, Victor, took out a secondary commercial line of credit using the physical property of this boutique as collateral. He missed 3 consecutive quarterly payments because he was busy diverting those funds to VB Creations, his private shell company with Bianca. The bank declared a technical default 48 hours ago. Under the terms of the mortgage agreement, the lender has the immediate right to sell the debt package to any third-party liquidity entity. My client's holding firm, Vance Green Developments, purchased that debt for cash at 8:30 a.m. today." Clara tapped the document. "This is a formal, legally binding 3-day notice to quit. As the primary lien holder, Naomi Vance is exercising her right of immediate foreclosure due to material fraud and non-payment. You have exactly 72 hours to vacate these premises." Victor's head snapped up, his eyes bloodshot and wild with panic. He looked at Bianca, silently pleading for some kind of support, but Bianca was already backing away toward the display racks, her hands clutching her designer handbag like a shield. "Victor, do something," Bianca hissed, her voice stripped of all its soft, influencer sweetness. "You told me you had this entire situation under control. You told me Naomi was a pushover who would take her $10,000 buyout and disappear. If Charlotte Vance posts about this on her social media, my career is dead by sunset. I have a $100,000 contract negotiation with a cosmetics brand tomorrow morning. I can fix this, Bianca, I swear," Victor stammered, stepping toward her with his hands raised in a pleading gesture. "It's just a temporary legal hiccup. My mother has her personal investment portfolio. We can liquidate some assets, pay off the defaulted balance, and reclaim the title before the 3 days are up." Raid let out a cold, mocking laugh from behind me. He stepped forward, tossing a thick folder of printouts onto the counter. "With what money, Victor?" Raid asked, his voice steady and filled with years of quiet, accumulated anger. "I ran a full forensic audit of your mother's accounts last night using the administrative server logs. You didn't just drain the boutique's pre-orders. 6 months ago, you convinced your mother to sign a sweeping power of attorney, claiming you were investing her retirement funds into a high-yield mutual fund. In reality, you routed every single dollar of her savings directly into Bianca's personal account to buy her that luxury high-rise downtown and finance her promotional trip to Paris." Tabitha's eyes went wide. She turned slowly to look at her son, her face turning a sickly, translucent shade of gray. "Victor, what is he talking about? My treasury bonds, my husband's legacy fund. You told me they were earning 12% interest." Victor couldn't even look his mother in the eye. He shrank back, his silence confirming every single word Reed had just spoken. "You idiot!" Tabitha shrieked, lunging forward and striking Victor hard across the chest with her heavy leather purse. "You ruined us. You gave away our family's security to this cheap internet model." "Don't you dare call me cheap, you old bat," Bianca yelled back, her claws coming out instantly as she glared at Tabitha. "Your son is the one who came crawling to me, begging me to save his failing, dusty boutique. He lied to me just as much as he lied to you. He told me he was the sole creative genius behind the brand and that Naomi was just a hired hand who didn't understand fashion." Bianca sneered, turning her eyes to Victor with absolute, chilling contempt. "We are finished, Victor. Don't call me, don't text me, and if your name appears anywhere near my social media feed, my lawyers will sue you for harassment. You are a broke, pathetic fraud." With that, Bianca spun on her designer heels and marched out of the boutique, slamming the heavy glass door so hard that the brass logo of the Velvet Needle rattled against the frame. Victor collapsed onto his knees on the polished hardwood floor, his face buried in his hands as the reality of his total, systemic ruin settled over him. In less than 20 minutes, he had lost his wealthiest client, his mistress, his mother's life savings, and the very roof over his head. I walked slowly around the marble counter, stopping directly in front of him. I looked down at the man who had thrown me into the dark alleyway just 12 hours ago, calling me a kitchen-class worker who wasn't worthy of standing in his luxury studio. "You thought the brand was the building, Victor," I said softly, my voice carrying a quiet, unyielding power. "You thought it was the shiny brass letters on the door, the expensive lavender scent, and the pretty face taking photos in the front window. But you forgot that without the hands that actually design, cut, and so this place is nothing but an empty room full of expensive, stolen rags. I turned my back on him, walking toward the exit. You have 72 hours to pack your things, and don't bother taking the sewing patterns, Victor. Because if my designs are still in this building when the sheriff arrives on Monday morning, I will have you arrested for grand larceny. The heavy glass doors of the Ritz-Carlton's Grand Salon slid open with a soft, expensive hiss, revealing a room bathed in warm, architectural lighting. This was not Victor's studio. This was the preview showroom of Vance Atelier the Independent, high-end bridal label I had officially registered and funded using my personal savings and the initial deposit from an exclusive licensing agreement with an international luxury boutique network. Raid had spent the last 48 hours coordinating with the city's finest independent seamstresses. Together, we had moved my original cutting tables, my industrial sewing machines, and my private rolls of imported silk into this temporary, ultra-luxurious space. At the center of the room, displayed on a minimalist, brushed steel frame, was the newly completed, pristine version of the Aurelia gown. I had spent the night hand-pressing the delicate silk organza layers myself, ensuring that every seamless drape fell with absolute, fluid perfection. The guest list is completely locked, Naomi, Reed said, walking into the showroom with a tablet in hand. He looked sharp, wearing a tailored charcoal vest, his face glowing with a quiet, triumphant energy. Every single high society bride who had a pre-order scheduled at the Velvet Needle has canceled their contract with Victor. Charlotte Vance's personal stylist confirmed they are arriving in 10 minutes. And Victor? I asked, adjusting the drape of the gown. He tried to file an emergency injunction to block our launch yesterday afternoon, Reed smirked. But the judge threw it out within 5 minutes of reviewing the time-stamped KEDI files. Victor is currently sitting in a completely empty boutique. The sheriff's office has already scheduled the physical lockout for tomorrow morning. He has no staff, no stock, and no legal rights to a single design. Before I could answer, the heavy double doors of the salon opened, and Charlotte Vance walked in, accompanied by her mother and two of the city's most influential fashion editors. Charlotte stopped dead in her tracks the moment she saw the Aurelia gown standing under the spotlight. "It's even more beautiful in this light, Naomi," Charlotte said, her voice filled with a genuine, breathless admiration as she walked slowly toward the mannequin. "When I saw it at the other boutique, it looked stunning, but here, you can actually see the soul of the designer in the details. I am so incredibly sorry for the drama Victor put you through. The only thing that matters is that the dress is yours, Charlotte," I said, offering a warm, confident smile. "And this time, the name on the label actually matches the hands that made it." Charlotte's mother smiled, pulling out her checkbook with a flourished, deliberate motion. "Let's write the deposit check immediately. And this time, I want to make sure the funds go directly into a secure, verified account." Just as Charlotte's mother began to write, the doors to the salon burst open. Victor marched into the room, his designer suit wrinkled, his tie loosened, and his face a mask of sweating, desperate exhaustion. Behind him stood Tabitha, looking frantic as she tried to pull him back by his sleeve. "Naomi," Victor roared, his voice cracking as he pointed a trembling finger at me. "You stole them! You stole my clients! You stole my summer launch! This is my boutique's intellectual property, and I will see you in federal prison for this." Charlotte's mother froze, her pen hovering over the checkbook, her expression turning into one of icy, high society disgust. "Victor, you have exactly 5 seconds to leave this private suite before I have the Ritz security team handle you." "She is a thief, Mrs. Vance," Victor shrieked, ignoring the warning as he lunged toward the mannequin holding the Aurelia gown. "This design belongs to the Velvet Needle. She used our corporate facility to draft this." Reed stepped forward, his broad frame easily blocking Victor from getting any closer to the delicate fabric. "The court already ruled on this yesterday, Victor," I said, my voice dropping to a freezing, absolute calm that cut through his manic energy like a razor. "The digital timestamps prove these designs were finalized on my home server months before your corporate entity even existed. You have no legal claim, no merchant account, and no boutique. You are currently standing in a private suite, screaming at the woman who owns your outstanding debt." Tabitha stepped forward, her voice cracking as she pleaded with me, her eyes filled with tears. "Naomi, please, have some mercy. We have nothing left. The bank is foreclosing on our family home tomorrow. If you enforce this 3-day eviction notice, we will be on the street. Surely, we can reach some kind of settlement. Settlement? I asked, looking at the woman who had called me a kitchen-class worker just days ago. When you threw me out into the cold alleyway, you didn't offer a settlement. You offered me $10,000 to buy out my life's work and threatened to freeze my personal savings so I couldn't even afford a lawyer. You wanted to erase me completely. I stepped closer to them, my eyes locking onto Victor's hollow, defeated face. The time for negotiation is over, Victor, I said, my voice steady and cold. The eviction stands, the foreclosure stands. And if you do not walk out of those doors right now, I will have the police arrest you for trespassing and harassment in front of the very press you spent your entire life trying to impress. Victor stared at me, his mouth opening and closing as his last remaining shred of pride evaporated. He looked at Charlotte Vance, then at the fashion editors who were already typing furiously on their phones, documenting his total, pathetic public breakdown. With a broken, defeated groan, Victor turned around and stumbled out of the salon, with Tabitha trailing behind him, weeping softly into her designer scarf. The heavy glass door slid shut, sealing the quiet, elegant sanctuary once more. Charlotte Vance turned back to me, her pen meeting the paper with a firm, decisive stroke. Now, Naomi, let's write this check and get started on my first official fitting. The morning sun of Monday rose clear and blinding over the high-end Fashion Avenue, but it brought zero warmth to the grand storefront of the Velvet Needle. Outside, the street was quiet, save for a small, whispering crowd of local boutique owners, former clients, and fashion journalists who had gathered near the curb. They were watching a scene that would have been unthinkable just a week ago. 2 county deputy sheriffs stood by the front entrance, their official badges gleaming under the cold morning light. Beside them stood a licensed commercial locksmith, his heavy tool bag resting on the pavement. Victor and Tabitha stood on the sidewalk, surrounded by 3 mismatched, cardboard packing boxes. Victor looked completely hollow, his posture slumped and his eyes bloodshot, wearing a wrinkled trench coat that looked far too large for him. Tabitha was pale, her hands trembling as she clutched a small jewelry box, the final, pathetic remnant of her family's legacy. Every other piece of luxury furniture, the brass chandeliers, and the remaining bolt silk inside the boutique were now legally locked behind the glass. The locksmith finished his work with a loud, metallic click, withdrawing his tools and stepping aside. The lead deputy placed a heavy, red-bordered official sticker across the seam of the glass door. The bold, black letters read, "Foreclosed, property of Vance Green Developments." I stepped out from the back of the crowd, dressed in a sharp, impeccably tailored black trench coat and sunglasses. Beside me was Reed, holding a digital tablet that displayed the finalized asset inventory of Vance Atelier. When Victor saw me, a sudden, desperate surge of manic energy seemed to return to his limbs. He took 2 stumbling steps forward before one of the deputies placed a firm, warning hand on his chest. "Naomi," Victor choked out, his voice hoarse and desperate. "You can't do this. The inventory inside, those are my mother's personal collection samples. There are antique sewing tables in there that belonged to our family for decades. You are stealing our history." I stopped at the edge of the sidewalk, removing my sunglasses. My eyes locked on his with a quiet, unyielding coldness that instantly cut off his shouting. "I didn't steal anything, Victor," I said, my voice carrying clearly to the onlookers. "Your family leveraged every single physical asset inside this building as collateral for a secondary loan that you defaulted on. I purchased the debt, and the court granted me full possession of the property and its contents to settle the outstanding balance. On paper, you do not own a single thread inside that room." Tabitha stepped forward, her voice cracking as she swallowed her last shred of aristocratic pride. "Naomi, please. We have nothing. The bank has already initiated the foreclosure on our residential townhouse. We have no place to go. Let us at least take the vintage sewing machines. We can start a small alteration shop. We can survive." I looked at Tabitha, remembering the exact tone of her voice when she had called me a kitchen-class worker and told me to get out of her sight. "You told me that a designer's value is in their image, Tabitha," I said, my voice entirely flat. "You said I was just a tired maid who ruined your aesthetic. Now, you can see how much your aesthetic is worth without my work to back it up." The auction for the remaining interior assets begins at noon. If you want the machines, you are welcome to bid on them like everyone else. Before she could speak, a sleek black tower pulled up to the curb. The door opened and Charlotte Vance stepped out, flanked by two security guards from her father's firm. She didn't look at Victor or Tabitha. She walked straight to me, a warm, triumphant smile on her face. "The moving trucks are ready, Naomi," Charlotte said, her voice loud enough for the reporters to hear. "The new flagship space for Vance Atelier on the main avenue is fully prepped and waiting. My father's team has already completed the lease registration." "Thank you, Charlotte," I said, giving her a firm nod. "Raid, begin the transfer of the design tables. Let's leave the empty shell behind." As the moving crew began loading our personal tools and my private sketchbooks into the van, I turned to Victor one last time. He was sitting on one of his cardboard boxes, staring at his boots as the crowd began to snap photos of his public downfall. "The Velvet Needle is officially dead, Victor," I said softly. "And this time there is no one left to sew your lies back together." The grand opening of the new Vance Atelier showroom on the High Avenue was a masterclass in elegant, functional design. There was no fake, over-perfumed lavender scent or pretentious gold leaf trim. Instead, the space was open, bright, and filled with the natural warmth of polished oak, raw linen, and towering glass windows that let in the afternoon sun. In the center of the showroom stood the completed, hand-stitched Aurelia gown, surrounded by the 5 supporting pieces of my summer collection. Every garment carried the simple, understated label, Vance Atelier, designated by Naomi. The room was buzzing with the quiet chatter of the city's most prestigious bridal clients, fashion editors, and independent designers who had watched the entire legal battle unfold over the last 10 days. Raid walked over to me, holding 2 glasses of sparkling cider. He looked exceptionally proud, his eyes scanning the crowded room. "We've already booked 42 custom bridal consultations for the next 3 months, Naomi. The deposit checks have all cleared directly into our secure business account. We are completely independent." "We did it, Raid," I said, clinking my glass against his. "And we did it without a single compromised thread." Through the tall glass window, I could see the bustling street outside. A local delivery truck drove past, carrying a stack of flat, folded boxes from a cheap alteration shop on the edge of town. It was a quiet reminder of the world I had left behind. Victor and Tabitha had tried to build an empire of illusions, relying on the labor of others, while treating the artisans as disposable tools. They had believed that by locking the door and withholding my money, they could freeze my talent and steal my future. But they had forgotten the most fundamental rule of the craft. The strength of a garment doesn't lie in the brand stamped on the box. It lies in the integrity of the seams, the patience of the hands that guide the needle, and the resilience of the mind that drafts the pattern. I took a slow sip of my drink, watching Charlotte Vance laugh as she posed for a photo next to the Aurelia gown. I had finally stepped out of the dark alleyway, and the light of my own creation